Welcome to today's explainer. So if you're learning Spanish, you have probably hit that absolutely dreaded wall, the past tense, specifically the preterite, right? You learn all those nice, neat rules for regular verbs, and then suddenly you're hit with this massive, overwhelming list of irregular verbs that seem to just throw every single rule completely out the window. It feels like this frustrating, endless exercise in memorization. But what if I told you there's actually a hidden logic to it all? Today, we're going to turn that frustrating memorization into a highly satisfying, really simple code-breaking exercise. We are cracking the code of irregular preterite verbs in Spanish. Let's get into it.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, unlocking those irregular preterites. Then, we'll hit the U stems featuring tener and estar, the I stems with hacer, the J stems with decir, and finally, the identical twins, ir and ser.
All right, Section 1, Unlocking Irregular Preterites.
Okay, time to address the elephant in the room. Why are irregular verbs so deeply frustrating? Well, because on the surface, they look completely random. You try to apply the regular past tense endings you worked so hard to memorize, and the language just pushes right back. But what's hiding underneath all that apparent chaos is actually a highly structured system. They literally only seem random until you know the secret.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is the golden key to this entire explainer. Almost all of the major irregular verbs in the preterite actually share this exact same secret set of endings. Listen to these. I for yo, hiciste for tú, o for él, ella, or usted, hicimos for nosotros, and hicieron for ellos, ellas, or ustedes. Instead of memorizing a totally different ending for every single irregular verb, you just need to memorize this one master list. That's it. The only thing that changes is the root of the verb. Once you have the root, you just snap these endings right on, like Lego pieces.
Moving on to Section 2, the U stems, specifically tener and estar.
Now pay attention to how the roots transformed here. We take the infinitives, tener and estar, meaning to have and to be, we drop the ends, and we change their roots entirely to tuve and estuve. Notice how they beautifully share that UV pattern? That's exactly why we call them the U stems. Once you remember that tener becomes tuve and estar becomes estuve, the hard work is entirely done.
So, when we put this all together, we are just combining our U stems with our secret endings from earlier. Take the yo form, for instance. Tuve plus I becomes tuve. Estuve plus I becomes estuve. You can just read right down the list. Tuviste, estuviste. Tuvo, estuvo. Tuvimos, estuvimos. And tuvieron, estuvieron. It is a perfect, predictable, super easy to read pattern. No random guessing required whatsoever.
Let's look at this in a real-world scenario. Our source text provides this great little story about a guy named Antonio. The text reads, Ayer Antonio tuvo un día maravilloso, meaning yesterday Antonio had a wonderful day. You can see our third-person singular root, tuve, combined with that secret O ending perfectly deployed right here.
All right, Section 3, the I stems. Let's talk about hacer.
Since we've totally mastered the U stems, let's apply that exact same logic to our next secret pattern, using the absolutely essential verb hacer, which means to do or to make. Just like before, we chop off the infinitive ending of hacer. The root changes to hic, spelled H-I-C. Now, you might notice there's actually a second root listed here too, his, spelled H-I-Z. Don't let that panic you. It is a tiny, strictly necessary spelling change just for the third-person singular, and it exists purely to keep the pronunciation correct. Let me show you what I mean. The crucial point is right here in the middle of our conjugations. For yo, we take hic and add I to get hice. For do, we get hiciste. But think about él, ella, and usted. If we added the secret ending O to HIC, it would be spelled HICO. In Spanish, that's pronounced hico with a hard K sound. But the root needs a soft S sound. So Spanish brilliantly swaps the C for a Z to make hizo. The rest of the forms perfectly follow our standard rules. Hicimos, hicieron. Honestly, it's just an elegant solution to a very simple pronunciation problem.
Going back to Antonio's wonderfully busy day, the text continues, Después hizo un poco de café, which translates to, afterward he made a little coffee. You can clearly see that third-person hizo in action right here. He made the coffee. Simple, clear, and perfectly patterned.
Section 4 already, the J stems, featuring the verb decir.
Let's focus on this decir, which means to say or to tell. Now the transformation here is a little bit more dramatic.
the root for decir completely transforms into dij, spelled D-I-J. But hey, once you lock that specific root into your memory, you are completely prepared to plug it straight into our secret endings.
And this brilliantly illustrates our whole system at work once again. Look how seamlessly the dij root snaps onto those endings. Dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos. Now, I want you to pause at the bottom row for ellos and ustedes dijeron. Notice anything missing there? Our secret ending is usually ieron with an I, but here it's just eron. Why? Well, try saying dij-ieron. It's pretty clunky and awkward, right? Dropping the I makes dijeron just slide right off the tongue. It's an irregularity born out of pure convenience, which makes it super easy to remember. Let's anchor this with another quick line from our source. Antonio was at a job interview, and the text says, Él dijo muchas cosas sobre su anterior trabajo, meaning he said many things about his previous job. And boom, there's our J stem in the third person singular, dijo.
Finally, Section 5. The identical twins. Er and ser. We have finally arrived at the most surprising and honestly kind of fascinating group of them all, the verbs ir, meaning to go, and ser, meaning to be. Here is the wild part about these two entirely different verbs. To go implies movement, right? To be implies existence. They literally have nothing in common in English. But in Spanish, through a very strange twist of linguistic history, they end up sharing the exact same conjugation in the past tense. They are literal identical twins.
It's honestly a little mind-blowing when you lay it all out. These twin verbs break all the secret ending rules we just spent time learning. They rebel entirely and change their root to an F. Yo fui, tú fuiste, él fue, nosotros fuimos, ellos fueron. You do have to memorize this specific set, but the really good news is you get two extremely common verbs for the price of one memorization session. So that's a win.
But wait, you might be asking, if yo fui means both I went and I was, how on earth do I know which one someone is saying? Honestly, it's all about context. Because they sound completely identical, you must rely entirely on the context of the sentence to figure out the meaning. Generally speaking, if it's followed by a destination, it's went. If it's followed by an adjective or description, it's was.
Let's test this out using Antonio's story one last time. Our source text says, Él fue a una entrevista de trabajo. Now, help me figure this out. Does this mean he was to a job interview or he went to a job interview? Because there is a clear destination, the interview. It undeniably translates to he went. See? Context makes it instantly clear.
So let's conclude this explainer with a quick, fun challenge. How would you translate, I went to the party and it was great? Think about it. You would actually use the twin verb twice. Fui a la fiesta y fue genial. You see? What once looked like a totally random, chaotic list of verbs to memorize is actually a highly structured, manageable code. You have the secret endings, you know the U, I, and J stems, and you know exactly how to handle the identical twins. You've cracked the code. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Now that you've conquered the absolute most notorious verbs in the past tense, what other secret linguistic patterns are hiding in plain sight in Spanish, just waiting for you to decode them? Catch you next time.